this video was not the easiest video in subject matter for me to make, and I'm not the most comfortable with this, and it is pretty difficult to say what I'm going to say. But again, I know where I've been, and I know where a lot of you are, and I know how difficult it was for me, and how confusing things are, and how conflicting information, and what you're looking at and what you're hearing. This video is for those affected by the Mandela effect, but it's not for all affected, and those of you will know who you are. It's for those that have been profoundly affected, ending up in this place in time, not really sure how, very confusing, a very dark and confusing time, trying to make sense of the changes within yourself, the world around you, and family members and friends, many who have experienced illnesses, many deaths in your families, just unbelievable things that brought you from a normal life to here and now. Many of us experienced the same shadow people experiences and paralysis, sleep paralysis. Yet here we are all over the globe in different places, remote places, big cities, small cities. It doesn't matter. We all share similar experiences. And we've been trying to make sense of what the changes are, what could have caused it, what could be happening. And we can't talk to anybody that hasn't experienced this because they think you're crazy. There's no way we'd have the courage to talk about this freely. We went from a normal world with normal physics, normal rules, holographic, fine. Everything had order. But then out of nowhere, we were ripped from our reality. Nothing was making sense. There were no rules, no sense of stability, just nothing. It was just a crazy time. It looks normal, sure, but then there's these things always that just make it crazy. The skies are wrong, the moon are wrong, the stars are wrong. Animals we would have been afraid of, we would have ran as children, the things that we're seeing now. And we can't talk about this with people because in their timeline they've always had these things, and we can't prove ourselves to anyone because every timeline has its corresponding history and facts and documents and details. It's been a very trying time, and we've all been spending time looking at the world through new eyes in awe, trying to make sense of the new things we're seeing and the historical facts, and we can't believe it. It's been very difficult. Most of us who were outgoing and athletic and had a lot of professions and hobbies and things, we now prefer solitude, being alone. We don't really feel comfortable around people, and even our own family members who aren't going through this, who don't understand, who won't listen, because we know that there's something very, very important that we need to make of this, and we are all alone. When something changes, for instance, a particular well-known dinosaur never exists on one timeline, they'll have a story stating why that is. Everyone just seems to have a way of rationalizing everything away when they know the truth. And the people who aren't affected by the Mandela effect, they think we're crazy. But if you want to know what it feels like, this is what it would feel like and how ridiculous it is if you were seeing it. Yeah, crazy, right? That's what we feel like. Now, I know the majority of us are aware of the prevailing theories about what has happened, and I also know in many conversations with people and all the comment boards on all the videos that many of you have already decided on a particular theory. And I came very, very close to doing so myself, but like a few of you, I know that whatever this is, it is so big and so incredibly important that I had better make the right choice. So I decided what I'm going to do is just back up completely, go all the way back to when all this started for myself, and take a look, reassess everything from the bigger picture now that I have one, instead of working in stages from prior assumptions, each one building on every experience that happened along the way. Here we are, those of us who are affected, people of both gender, every race, so many beliefs located all around the world. Yet, why is it so few people, and what is it that really ties us all together? What do we all have in common that we are affected by this and can see all these things? We see life going on and people enjoying life and carrying on normally. Yet to us, it's more black and white now. Things have become a lot clearer, and we see things that we know isn't normal to see. And for those that we see around us, our family, friends, loved ones, we know that they're viewing life and reality, through these goggles that blind them and that dull them. And it's very painful. It's been such a painful journey. We've tried to talk to our families and loved ones, some of us with much effort, and know we just can't get through to them no matter what. And we just look at all the craziness and just continue to see things that we know didn't exist and we know weren't there. They would have been in every history book from our childhood, but they've always got a story. All these new animals, new species, this, rainbow theme that's going on. There is something to make of this, and we better figure out what that is, because it's not by chance, and it is clearly screaming something to those of us who see, and it's going to be critically important, eternally and permanently important, that we read the signs, the messages correctly. You have to do it. We have all come to know all too well when we go to do our searches, trying to look for what we know, trying to prove to our loved ones that the new information is always at the top of every search, Google, Wikipedia, and it's hard and far and few between to get to the information we know as it existed. We all know that Google has become a very interesting thing. Wikipedia has all become a very interesting thing. And we could try to say, when the things like the Statue of Liberty here, showing Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island, we'll get the arguments, no, they're talking about the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. They're not saying Statue of Liberty is on Ellis Island. Well, it doesn't match, it doesn't mention Liberty Island here. So then we'll think of more ways to try to prove to people what we know to be fact. Flies over Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. No, again, it's not saying the Statue of Liberty is on Ellis Island. So we have a really difficult time, even during shifts when it can be in debate what state something is in. You'll go to credible sites to look something up, and what they'll end up doing is they'll have the information, but it will be in such a format that it won't even give the information what island Statue of Liberty is on, where we are located in the galaxy. And this is how, in those instances, that they get around, not having one group or the other be able to identify what the truth is. So I found a definitive one for you that says, in no uncertain terms, this is a tour company. Here's the URL, if you can make that out. So I don't think a tour company who sells tickets in New York to the Statue of Liberty is going to get this wrong. And let's look down here. Officially named Liberty Enlightening the World, 150-foot tall structure presented to the U.S. as a centennial gift from France, 1886, perched atop Ellis Island in New York Harbor. So I don't want to argue with anyone. This is what's happening, and nobody sees it. If the increase in the Schumann resonance frequency is due to ascension to cause all these DNA changes, well, that doesn't still explain that the changes to the body were overnight. Maybe many people don't realize that, sure, the added energy can be applied to DNA right now, but it takes DNA time to make and express proteins to build themselves and aggregate into tissues and organs. And, look at the changes to the skull. I don't think people realize how long the process for bone remodeling actually takes. This is not the answer. This theory does not fit this. Now, some people say that the Mandela effect is only an internet psyop, and that's to say that only those finding or seeing these changes are those that see it via the internet, that people are only aware of anything or any changes because of the internet. So it's an internet psyop. Well, there are many of us who have seen changes or have been puzzled by things, and that's only led us to the internet to go seek out explanations for the changes we're seeing. That's what happened to me, and I know a lot of you personally, in talking with you, that was the same way that you came upon this as well. So these are not just changes that are in the illusionary matrix world of the internet. These are changes that are happening outside the internet. So I think that theory is the least credible and the easiest to dispute, because many of us noticed these things and went looking for the explanations because of them, and not vice versa. Another thing about ascension, the ascension theory, well, some people say that just not everybody's waking up, and some people are slower, and maybe some it won't happen at all. But yeah, this is ascension, and we're becoming enlightened and developing and evolving. Okay, well, how does a change in one's consciousness explain all these people we see disappearing or coming back from the dead? It doesn't. What does a change in our consciousness have to do with the chemtrails they're seeding the sky with? Well, if we are becoming enlightened through this ascension process, You don't think that any of the elite or Illuminati are becoming enlightened too? To not want to fill our air with nanoparticulates? No, the Illuminati seem to be immune to this enlightenment or ascension process from the energy we're getting blasted with in this photon belt and as we moved into it. So if they are not affected and we are, then again it points to the fact that there are differences between people that we can't see with our eyes, but that signifies some hefty importance. Now, some people will say, well, the elite are putting the chemtrails up there for that reason, because they're blocking the incoming energy with those chemtrails full of particulates so that we don't become enlightened. They're trying to block this process. But think about it. If this were only about ascension, where all people become so transformed into the absolute highest spiritual, selfless versions of ourselves, where there is, free energy, unlimited resources, and, the chance at evolving into dimensional beings of the highest ourselves, well then, why wouldn't the elite want that for themselves too? Why block the energy to try to prevent it? If full ascension is the best and highest place we could ever wish to be, then why would they want to stay here in this sinful, corrupt place of suffering? They wouldn't. So I'll tell you why. It's because they are being manipulated by evil spirits, and they're trusting what these interdimensional beings are saying, and it's not going to have a good outcome. The whole problem with putting the chemtrails in the atmosphere, even if it weren't due to evil spirits, is that too many of us have been seeing the bodies of this mini solar system, which is crossing ours. Now, anyone remember what the name Nibiru means? Crossing, planet of crossing. Doesn't anyone have a problem with the fact that this system was published and reported in scientific journals, magazines, major newspapers back in 2003, 2004? I don't remember exactly, but I read them myself. And now there is no mention and no trace of these publications, and only denials. Occam's razor, the simplest explanation, is generally the correct one. All these publications and notations were removed because they are hiding the information from us. We've got many cultural stories which talk about this incoming planet: Herculobus, the destroyer, Red Dragon, Wormwood. Well, why is it that we are so quick to give credibility to others' ancient stories, but we have the same thing talked about right here in our Bible, and nobody wants to give that any real consideration in the least? It's absolutely ridiculous. CERN-only theories. There are people all over the world who are affected. So if this is strictly from CERN, creating micro tears in the space-time fabric, well then how did they do so in such a way that it only affected certain people? I mean, we have lots of families who are affected, people who eat, play, and sleep right next to each other all day, every day, where only one member is affected. So if the odds of that isn't realistic to begin with, imagine how exponential the odds climb then, that this didn't just happen only once, but it's happened and continues to happen several times now to the same people, again and again and again. Now, this doesn't seem too probable if the selection of people is demonstrated to be select people. We can see it demonstrated by the fact that it continues to happen, or maybe we're the ones who continue to notice the changes, whichever the case may be. But if this is the case, it would still indicate that there's something specific about us which is unique, something unique enough to be triggered by something. Now, this is actually likely the case regardless of which theory we're talking about, because if the changes were due to time travel glitches, then why wouldn't everyone, if all of us are the same and we can see things, then why can't everyone? The other thing about it being CERN only is that on top of the odds being high to only affect specific people and affect the same people repeatedly, think about the odds of additionally affecting predominantly one particular specific demographic group. Now, while there are people in dozens and dozens of countries who see the changes, the majority who are experiencing it and see it, true, are in the US, Australia, UK, and Canada. So on the surface, the defining demographic appears to be, and everyone talks about this being, an English-speaking problem or phenomenon, right? Now here is where we need to be very careful, because everyone is going to be very misled if they don't look closer at the affected demographic. If you look at a world map of countries, what you see is that these white English-speaking people are the surface variable for the true underlying characteristic that is identical through those regions, and that is that we are predominantly Christians. Now, if you don't believe me, all you have to do is compare countries with high percentages of English-speaking as the first language people with the list of countries with the predominant religion. Okay, so how many people speak English? United States, we got about 96%. For the religion, looks like about 80% Christian. Let's look at Canada. About 86% of people speak English. What's the religion? About 70% Christian. So let's look at New Zealand. About 98%. Looks like about a little over half. Australia, 97% of the people speak English. About 66-67% Christian. Well, now wait, looks like Malaysia and Israel have a high percentage English-speaking people. Malaysia, no. They're predominantly Muslim, Buddhist, Taoist, Hindu. Oh, so that doesn't hold. Let's look at Israel, 85%. No, only 0.4%, so I guess it's not just an English-speaking thing. Then I guess if I check my YouTube analytics, I ought to see it's not Malaysia and not Israel, but the other countries. And look, oh, we got Germany and Philippines. No Malaysia, no Israel. So Germany and Philippines, let's go see if that makes sense. Philippines, about 86% Christian, and Germany, 70% speaking English, and about 70% Christian. Yeah, this fits. The same thing goes for time travel. If there were time travel glitches that were genuinely resulting in these changes that we're seeing, then wouldn't you think, out of all the shifts we've had, if these changes were due to someone who's going in repeatedly to fix things, or even just to carry out, different missions, then there would be different effects each time that would affect different people, such that different people would notice these things during the different shifts. And that's not what's happening. The same people are the ones who are seeing the changes. And it doesn't really matter whether it's the theory of time travel is the correct one, because if it is, then the fact that it only affects certain people, a certain demographic, again, then there is still something unique about our group who can see it and are getting these numerical synchronicities calls which point to another underlying and greater truth. Now, I know there's a good chunk of you out there who have been really paying a lot of attention to this, doing a lot of research, because you have seen a lot yourself, and some of you haven't seen this, but I will tell you, there have been many instances during each shift where we will go on and notice that YouTube and our fellow channel owners, videos that we've already watched 3, 4, 5 months ago, some longer, will all of a sudden be released as new, and there won't be any history, and they'll just be presenting this for the first time, and we'll be thinking, what are they talking about? This is old news. We've already heard this. And so a lot of people that want to go with the internet psyop theory and say, well, yeah, YouTube, Google, they're all in on this and they're all just doing this. And that would be great, and that would be easy to prove, with the exception that the comments section, you talk to these people and they respond in real time. So they don't have any clue that you've seen their videos 3 months ago, 6 months ago, whatever. So it's not an internet psyop. I've had people myself tell me, what, that's crazy. I just came across your video and I just went back to it today, and it's 2 months a different upload date. I've had people who have left comments as themselves simultaneously on 2 different videos, back-to-back comments, where somebody will make a comment, an affirmative comment, and agree, and it's, positive. And on the other hand, on another comment, have a completely opposite comment, and you're like, what the hell? That makes no sense at all. Lots and lots of people have seen these things. People who see things in the sky, like I do. There will be a shift. Things will get really crazy, and you'll know we're getting ready for a shift, and the anxiety levels become unbearable, and doesn't look like the skies can get any more crazy, and today's the last day, and then the next day the skies will be clear, and all the videos you'll go to watch on, Nibiru, or, the top channels we all watch, all of a sudden to listen to them, it's like they don't even have an awareness of how far progressed and advanced things have come, and they're backing up, it seems like, a year where they're reporting on stuff. And it's just, there's no explanation for that. There's just a lot. I think I'd mentioned in my first video, back when I was just starting to become aware of things and had watched the second group come here, and then went to look and see the video comments that were posted under, a multitude of videos, and would catch them in between shifts where, the majority would be commenting about a particular Mandela effect, but then that change wasn't valid anymore, and you would see a comment thrown in there, what are you talking about? It is spelled like this, or this is the way it is, or this is the way it looks. And then a few days later, those comments would be gone, and it would be all in accordance with one timeline. I watched a man accurately predict to the number of delegate votes that Trump was going to win, how many states. And this was 3 months before the elections took place. It was insane. So, not just an internet psyop, sorry to say, and that's the easiest one to rule out. If this is ascension, perhaps the most troubling thing to me, well, among many, is that if this is benign and there's no underlying reason or significance, then it's the appointed time, we're moving through the photon belt, and we're upgrading, and, we're becoming ascended beings. And, it doesn't matter if we see all these little changes in logos or spellings, because it's not what it's about. It's about ascension. Just go with it, enjoy it, have fun. Well, the other big problem I got with this is all the changes to the Bible. So if this has no spiritual meaning and it's not a wake-up call and God isn't trying to get in touch with his seed because we're getting toward the end, why aren't there changes in the Quran or other holy texts? If this is just kind of random, meaningless things and the changes are just kind of arbitrary and everywhere, well, yeah, okay. Well, then why so many overwhelming changes to the Bible and not other holy texts? The Quran talks about end of days events that have to take place before the end times, just like the Bible does. So you ever wonder what their signs are or what they're thinking they're going to see before the end times? Well, I'll tell you, other than like one or two things, which maybe we just don't know yet, but are going to happen, it's pretty much what the Bible says. You know, it involves Jesus coming back. It involves, hailstone fire coming up, strange smoke coming out when the demons are going to come out of the earth. And also talks about the sun rising in the west. Why do you think it's going to rise in the west? Well, it's not because the sun has changed position. It's because this planet and red dwarf star and this mini solar system, which have such an intense gravitational and electromagnetic pull, that our poles are being pulled off their normal axis until the point where it will appear that the sun is rising in the west. I know there's a lot of other people who see the sky changes and see the sky the way that I do. This isn't the way the sky used to look, and I just, honestly, I don't understand anyone who can walk outside at any time of the day and not see something seriously wrong. I want to show you something actually out on my balcony really quick. This is the balcony to my apartment, and this overlooks across where I park like garage units, storage units. And I want you to see the roof line and the trees and the light post that's right there on the right. And I'm showing you this so that you can see that there's no hills or mountains. Obviously, this is South Florida. There's no towers. There's no buildings, anything other than sky here. And I'm showing you this in the daytime because of what I want to show you next. Here I just want to show you, this is my couch, and I fall asleep here a lot at night, and I get woken up at 4:15 in the morning through the window you see in the background most nights of the week, and this is what I see. And that's the same garage line I just showed you, and now it's zoomed in, and I'm going to let you take a look at that. and you want to say again about how powerful the fallen angels or demons are, who are here manipulating everybody, and everybody thinks, no, not me, my thoughts are my own. Well, we've got an entire country in Iceland where now the religion is, guess what? It's not Christian, it's not Muslim, it's not Buddhist, it's not, anything you would expect. It's a Sumerian-based religion, so you know who their gods are, and if you've heard the stories by Zecharia Sitchin, and know about the giants and the Nephilim on this big planet that's coming. Well, do you think people just came up with this story and this big push that is now predominating the entire political system of an entire country? Yeah, these things are really powerful and really manipulative, and just nobody is willing to let down their ego and think that they're not susceptible. You just got no clue how powerful these things are. I guess the last things that I witnessed during the last shift were a little overwhelming, but they did help point me in the right direction. I know that a lot of people recently, and there's a big push for taking the ascension, or what the interdimensionals are saying, theories, and I just had some pretty major things. I know I shouldn't wait, because for a lot of you, you're going to want to know this. You should know this right away, so that you can really make the right choices for yourself. Now, all of us who have been affected by this Mandela mark, there's actually a few groups of us, as a lot of you know. That's no new news. But I think there's a lot of things that some of you don't know about us, and they're really important distinctions. Now, to even talk about some of what I want to say, I've got to go back a little bit, because we're all looking for answers, and it's really going to be impossible to do so unless we really define what is it that we're actually looking for answers to. What are those things that have happened to us to let us know, in no uncertain terms, that something has happened, and to go, search for answers and information. I think now that some of us have a larger picture to work with, that the best thing to do is back all the way up and put everything in context of the larger picture if we really expect to get any answers for any of this. There have been an important number of observations that I've made that I know several of you have already as well, especially during these big shifts, when all of a sudden we notice that a lot of our fellow members in our channel groups all of a sudden look a little bit different, sound a little bit different, have completely different mannerisms, or for some reason, a little bit different of a channel name. And that's pretty freaky. And, they don't really remember, or, things that they've done on their channel before, or, I don't know, you know what I'm talking about if you've noticed this. The other thing that I've discovered is, I think because we're in this small group, we've all tended to make a lot of assumptions that we've all undergone and gone through the same process to get to where we are now. But I don't think that's the case. Remember, in the last video, I kind of talked about knowing what happened to me, not understanding why, but I knew I had come here completely, purified spiritually, really kind of felt like I came here perfect and, have been very offended even by the small injustices and sins and whatever. I assumed that had been the case for everybody else as well. But then I got to notice in talking with many of you, through the channel and email, and I got to where I can now tell where a person, like what timeline they're from or what kind of person they are, based on their sets of memories. And that's pretty weird, because people who have one set of memories or this set or that set, they're this kind of person. Now on the surface, we all know, the base similarities that we all apparently share. We all know that we're all very nice people. We're all very, very empathetic. We really care about people and the injustices in the world. Yeah, that's all us. Well, there's other things too that, the spiritual things that I guess we've just kind of taken for granted, and there's different stages of that too. Well, why this is important is because about a month and a half ago, there had been somebody who posted a comment under one of my videos, and it was a benign comment, but I think that was what triggered this whole direction change in thinking and where to go look for things and whatever. It was some girl who just simply said, lighten up, girl, everybody knows it's just ascension and, it's fun and you really just need to go with it. And that really struck me hard in a really peculiar way. Now, I'll have to tell you that the first 2 of the 3 years of this, I spent a lot of time, and I'm a little bit ashamed to say, probably more than most people have, trying to research and figure this thing out, because I was one of those people that was so profoundly affected. It was just crazy, horrible, not for a weekend, not for 2 months. I mean, just crazy, 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 and really didn't know what to do with it. And I'm not uneducated. For those of you who don't know, I have a doctorate degree in pharmacy. I've done clinical rotations at the absolute positively top locations in the country. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because I always thought that if I sat and focused hard enough and long enough and gave this enough effort, that I would be able to figure out what this is, what happened, why did it happen, how did it happen, when is it going to stop, what does it mean, and why me? And hard as I tried, as much effort as I could possibly give, I could not figure this out. And I know to all of us, this is literally the biggest riddle our minds have ever been faced with. I mean, it's just so incredibly huge and pervasive and unreal. The next thing I want to say is, again, this video isn't for all of us, because really I'm just speaking to those who, unlike those that we've seen that have had such an easy time with this, are having fun with it, are, going with the ascension or the interdimensional theories, and, lots of good stuff is happening for them. I know that for a group of people that had a normal life, whatever normal is or means, and a really hard time, a really dark time, and many of us even fell into this very dark depression. And I know when other people, normal people, hear that, they think, okay, dark depression. But I'm talking to the people who know that I'm referring to a dark, surreal depression that is completely unimaginable by normal people. Many of us, that I've talked to, have experienced even a complete severing, a complete disconnection from the Creator, from God. And while they were afraid to tell family members or friends, even people that were going through this with them, they knew it within themselves. They felt it as palpable as a cinder block. They knew God was no longer in them, around them, couldn't be accessed, and that scared them even more during this because, you know, if it was the CERN thing and we're in a completely new parallel dimension and I don't feel God anywhere and I know he doesn't exist now, then maybe all this CERN stuff is right and maybe the interdimensional beings are right because I don't feel them, I can't get to them. And you felt this really overwhelming, undescribable void in your very soul that you knew was there and you couldn't do anything about it. Even if everything was fine around you, you know, your loved ones, everybody laughing, sharing a meal, doing something together, you knew something was very, very wrong. Well, a lot of you at that point, whatever faith level you did have in God, some of you tried to hang on to it and go with it despite, you know, the problems and the pain and everything that you were seeing and everything that was going on. Some of you became even angry with God at this point and cursed him for, you know, feeling like he abandoned you or, you know, whatever. People have done different things. And then a few months ago, you know, there was this real big push for all the, you know, higher self type channels in 5D, you know, and all these, you know, introduction of the Pleiadians and all these other interdimensional beings that are supposedly here because it's the natural time of ascension to assist humanity and mankind in showing you that, you know, you are your own co-creator and you can manifest whatever you want, you know, just by thinking it and believing it and speaking it with your tongue. All this stuff is really kind of blossoming, and I see all these people really going with this. I just don't think that there's any more time, and I know I'm going to be really failing a lot of people if I don't put this out now and don't tell you what I found, because literally I know those of you who are out there in this position and have gone through this or are still kind of on the fence about this and don't still really know what to make and believe for yourself so that you can, you know, go somewhere from this. And really it's for you that I'm doing this video. I got to say something about, you know, I got to talk about the religious parts of this, and not so much in a sense, you know, I'm not one who really studied the Bible. Yes, you know, I grew up going to church, you know, for however many years and learned whatever scriptures, but I made certain assumptions myself and I never really studied. So much like a lot of you, when all of this stuff started, you know, we all started looking in different directions, and somehow most of us migrated in the same areas and wound up on these, you know, ascension and awakening type things. And, you know, even if we didn't want to listen to them at first, even if we started with the obvious, you know, and thinking in terms of this, you know, as religious signs and calls and things like that, it was somehow just easier to go to where it seemed like there were a few real explanations for this in those other channels. And a lot of people went there, stayed there. Some kind of don't know. But after this last shift and what I've seen happen, again, the craziness that some of you have seen, some of you probably haven't. And, you know, now that I've witnessed even more when I read that comment on my channel, something struck me finally, in that, you know how when something doesn't feel right for you, it all of a sudden becomes very obvious. Like if there's a bunch of people around you doing bad things and they're like, oh, come on, do it, try it. You know, you're the kind of person that's a pretty big red flag to. And it stops you and says, whoa, you know, all these people are doing this and I kind of, you know, something doesn't feel right about that, yet everybody's pushing you to do it. Well, you really need to listen to yourself, because all that has happened, every sign, every synchronicity, every ringing in the ear, every 1111, every 1111 instead of IV on a Roman numeral clock, everything that's happened has actually been a sign and a wonder that has been discussed in the Bible. And, you know, I, like you, had been going, you know, when I see different numbers coming to me and different things hitting me all over the place, you know, I did what a lot of you did. You know, I would go to Google and, you know, go to numerology and, you know, look it up, or what does this place have to say about it. Didn't occur to me, or I didn't look too much in depth, I guess I'd say, into what the biblical meanings are. And there are a lot of meanings given to us if you just go look. And if you think about all of these different things that we've all seen, that we've all experienced, and then you go look at each theory and see what explanation or reason they give you for these synchronicities, or for this or for that, see what kind of sense their answer makes to you. And then if you go to look it up, the biblical scripture or the meaning for it, it actually tells you, and all of these things have been from God trying to wake us up and trying to let us know, hey, there's something going on, there's, you know, an appointed time, and yep, and my phone gets shut off one more time. Can't get this message out. Just think to yourselves, the message of all these Pleiadians, you can be your own gods, lighten up, blah, blah, blah. Did you know about these people 10 years ago, 20 years ago, if you're older? Or is this kind of a new thing for you to be hearing all these people talking about giving their message? What are they saying? Did you hear about the Bible 5 years ago, 10 years ago? Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's always been there. So who are these people or things to be giving you instruction or telling you what to believe, what to do? We don't know these people from Adam. Yeah. These are strangers. You don't know who they are or what interests or motivation they have. Sure, they say they're neutral and they're just about assisting your awakening. Are you going to trust that if something, I mean, you know, I'm not telling you anything new. You know how big and crazy everything you've seen. And are you going to trust what it means and what message you should take from this? From strangers that you know are channeled beings? And does something just scream wrong about somebody telling you to believe that you are your own God? If you have any Christianity in you, you will recognize that as pretty blasphemous, right? I hope. A lot of you have seen, especially the last shift, unbelievably crazy things that just don't make any sense at all. Well, what are these theory places? What explanations are they giving you? I'll tell you, the 1111 that is the 11th hour. We are in the 11th hour, and that is a wake-up call to you. And many people are receiving it. You know, if you haven't heard that, how about the trumpet call? How about the last year or 2 years of ringing in your ears? You know, okay, well, yeah, the Schumann resonance is elevating, but that's not to say that that's an operation of God. You know, if this is natural ascension, then why are people disappearing from the memory of other family members and friends, and why are other people coming back to life? What are they saying about that? Are you willing that into existence through combined collective thought? I don't think so. Matter of fact, I know so. So you really need to be careful in what you take as truth and what you're going to believe, because these entities, which are really fallen angels, which are demons, you have no idea how powerful they actually are. And why do you think it's going to be that there are going to be so many people who are deceived in the end days? You know, I'm sure you know a lot of people who are really smart, really intelligent people. You know, what kind of trickery and what kind of manipulation are they possibly going to be using to be deceiving so many people? You know, everything about this, you know, consent that you give to these beings, and make sure you seal your intent by whatever date, which I'll get to that in a minute. You know, you are giving your physical consent to these beings to manipulate you and to do whatever you want in ways that you can't imagine. You know, everybody has this image of, no, I never gave consent, I never, you know, yeah, you do. Every time you come across, you know, you're flipping through the YouTube channel and you see a title and you decide to click on it and watching it, you're making a choice to watch that video. If you watch the whole video, or if you, whatever part you watch of it, you are choosing to allow that into you and into your mind. And I'm just telling you, I have seen so much that if you haven't done a lot of research into this, you just can't imagine what's really going on. You know, all this, you know, the new species of, you know, fish, bugs, spiders, whatever, you know, this whole rainbow theme, all these colors. And, well, do you remember the symbol in the Bible of the rainbow and what that represented? You know, God is screaming at people to get their attention with symbols they know. And every time, and this is the reason why God speaks in parables, it's not to confuse people. It's because the people who belong to him, the people who have ears and eyes to hear him, he has to talk to you in a specific way that you will understand and the demons will not understand. And every time a sign is given and an effort is made to reach out and get our attention, that's like a big signal to all the demons to jump on the bandwagon and start putting out reasons why this is and what it means. But it's all false. It's all misleading. It's all pointing in the wrong direction. Now, last year, I honestly believe something very significant happened, and to anybody else that happens to be those that have seen the same thing last year, and I know there are some of you, I believe that the demons were actually loosed out on the earth last year, and I think that's what I saw in the skies all around, everywhere. coming out of the ground, coming out of the clouds, coming out of the sun, and that's very scary. I know that they're here. I know that they are everywhere, and I know that they're not going to waste any time. Once they're allowed to do whatever they want to do, it's game on, and they're not going to waste any time, and it's going to be pure spiritual warfare the entire rest of the way. As far as the differences between us, I think some of us came here through being spiritually purified, and the Bible talks about the 144,000 and the 2 witnesses, and I think many of us who are having a difficult time, it's because we have been appointed to be one of the witnesses, which is the 144,000, to go out and try to testify to the remaining people that have a chance at coming to Jesus, and that's going to be the little flock. That's the second witness. So those are the 2 groups. And I know that a lot of the churches put out a lot of videos, and everybody's making, their assessments and assumptions about what's what. But you know as well as I do, and you know intimately, and you know firsthand what you've seen and what you've gone through. The verses in the Bible, yes, it's all there, but I understand now why everybody will interpret it in the way that the human mind can understand. And it's not actually happening in the way that I believe it's happening. It's all written there. You'll understand it if you're going through this. You'll understand if you are one of these people, and it's clear as day to me now. It's a big deal, and you need to make sure you take the right mark from this, because if you go with the ascension and these interdimensional beings, you can't imagine. If you think you're feeling bad now and have a big void and can't find answers, imagine that permanently for an eternity, and that is what it's going to be like. I struggled in looking for answers and really, really trying hard as I started putting the pieces together, wanting to make sure and being very cautious that what I was understanding and seeing and being given was indeed from God, and not from demons, because I've been through a lot. I don't want to make any wrong steps here, just like you. So I started to do an awful lot of praying, an awful lot of diving into the scripture, and even though it's easier said than done, and it seems so simple when you have heard everybody say, just keep praying and, stick with it until he reveals himself. Honest to God, that's exactly what happened. And he showed me a lot of things. Now, some of them were pretty tough to swallow, and some, while the overall picture is a good one, and I feel very blessed, it's still a very difficult road that some of us are going to be going down. But just don't give up until you find him. And there's a reason that many of us felt that disconnect. And if you don't understand, I know it feels like a punishment. I know it feels like, what the demons want you to think, you're worthless and he's abandoned you and you're not good enough and all this stuff. And none of it's true. He is there. He does hear you. You are fine, and you are going to be fine, and you are going to make it, and you are going to be with him and be taken. And you just have to have faith. and you can't let go, and you can't get angry, because you're actually you're doing a lot of other people good that would otherwise be snatched up at the end by Satan. Be very cautious. Don't spend all your time looking at the news and, worrying about what's going on in the world. Don't spend your time preparing and, getting storage of food and survival stuff. And I know that's really hard to do, because I spent all my time trying to figure everything out and worrying, because I didn't know, which group I belonged to. I didn't know if I was okay. And if you ask him earnestly and sincerely, he will show you the answers. He will tell you the answers still, even in the state and the position we are in right now. He will. Now, I know a lot of people, kind of laugh and scoff at people who, say something or put out something as some kind of sign, that God has showed them something or told them something. But, I got to tell you, and as stupid as it sounds, imagine, what position I was in and what I was worrying about and everything, and worried that, I was being manipulated by the wrong spirits, and trying so hard to be right and good and make the right decision and know what to make of all this. Well, I actually got a few huge signs from God, and the biggest one, as stupid as it sounds, just came last week, where that was essentially the first time in 3 years I have felt any relief or any peace about all of this. Because just like you, I can't take this as a light situation. I see too much. I see the skies and everything that's going on. I've seen the shifts. I've watched people change. I, have seen people disappear without family members even remembering, what are you talking about? I've just seen too much, and I know that I better make the right choice. So, do you remember Mandela Affected and his video that he just came out with as his new self, which I kind of liked his old self better. But with the cards, he found a way to, for sure, detect if you've had a shift change. And I decided I was going to go get a deck of cards and do it myself. And I got all the cards numbered on both sides, but then I didn't get around to making some memory where I could remember, the suit in the order, because it's a bit difficult, and I had to go to work and do some other stuff. So I left the deck of cards on my sofa in my apartment, and nobody's in my apartment, and nobody would know what the cards mean. And the day after, I came home, and one of my cards was missing. So forget about detecting if one's even out of order. One was completely missing. And I still didn't make too much of it for some reason. We kind of get used to all these, weird things that go on, and we just can't deal with it, so don't think about it. So I was missing that card, 12. On the back, I had numbered it 12. And then I had been shown a lot more things, had been pretty troubled by them, and did a lot more praying, went to work the next day, had some realizations that came home from work, went up to my apartment, super tired, super hungry, got into my cupboard to get a bowl of cereal, and there was a single card in my closed cupboard. Nobody's been in my apartment. It wasn't the missing card. This was a different card. So, kind of freaking, I pick up the card, I look at both sides. You know, it's the ace of clubs on one side with my number written in the small bottom corner. And on the back of the card, it had the big number that I'd written on it to keep the order of the deck. And it was number 9. And I knew it was a test, you know, and he wanted to know if I was going to go online to numerology.com or whatever and try to find out what does the ace of clubs mean. But I know better by now, and I'm not going to do that. So I took the 9 and went online and looked up the biblical meaning of the number 9. And that was a pretty nice message for me. And I actually kind of screamed out loud with a big, huge smile, thanking God, because that answered half of what I really want to know. I mean, there's a lot I want to know, but, you know, there are 2 main things I just, you know, please let me know. And that was one of them. So you've seen, you know what's going on. You know, you're not one of these people who, you know, is the Mandela effect even real? Is it not real? You know it's real. You know what's going on. So try to have the same frame of mind when I'm telling you, you really need to go research the scriptures. If you're still watching the other videos, my phone dies even again for the last time. So anyway, if any of you are watching those videos, I just didn't want to wait until to get this message out to let you know you really, really need to go do some Bible research and some sincere and heavy praying, because he will let you know what you need to be knowing and what you need to be doing. You know, I don't know what roles we all have and what roles we are going to have, but I do know that there are separate ones of us. And I think the ones that are out there, you know, pushing the word, you know, well, I don't understand this. At first I thought it was CERN, and then I thought maybe it was a Bible thing, but, you know, I'm an atheist and I don't believe in God, so I know it can't be that. Well, just like the Antichrist and the evil one is going to come before Christ does, there always seems to be the false something, the false one coming before the real one. And I think some of this is people who on the surface look like us, but I think they're the false ones, you know, that once, you know, the demons kind of find out, you know, what's God's been doing and trying to point all this stuff out to us, you know, then they jump on board and they try to give you reasons, just like, you know, the people will try to throw everyone off who's getting the call from God and try to lead them away to think that this is not a call from God. That is what the point and the purpose of that group is. So, you know, just like the rainbow, you know, in the Bible, that's why we got all this crazy rainbow stuff. You know, we're in the 11th hour. People started not to be able to figure out, well, what is the 1111? So now we got the Roman numerals changed and the IV is replaced by a big, bold 1111. You know, why isn't anybody listening? Why isn't anybody getting it? It is a wake-up call, and many are called and few are going to be chosen. And the reason is because not everybody is making and getting the right message from who the call is coming from. I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm just saying, do you remember how it talks about, in the end days, that God is going to, spread his spirit among the world? He's just going to pour it out on everyone. And not everyone is going to have the same role, even though we're somehow linked and we're all the same, that we're seeing these things and we're perceptive to different things or feeling different things. Just that, the people that are going to be chosen in the end days, the 144,000 that are going to be sealed to do special tasks or activities, I think they're going to have to stay past the rapture, and they're going to be called upon to testify and do different things. And the people that are going to undergo that spiritual purification, who are going to be taken while they're alive in the end days and be put through the fire and the process and put back in order to do that job, well, think about it. We're human and we are imperfect. And if he's going to be calling on people to take those positions or seal people without even, our own knowledge for those activities, you can't be corrupt, you can't be imperfect, you can't be impure for that role. So I think when all that talk, about sealing the 144,000 and being taken and being put through that process, well, I think that those of us who have experienced this as a particularly dark and sad and confusing and just surreal process over the last couple years, well, I think that is being put through the fire and being cleansed and being purified, which is a pretty painful thing to undergo, I'm saying. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm saying that the rest of us who, are getting called or are seeing things or, being made aware of, the signs and the times, I'm not saying that, they're in the wrong or, just because they're having a good time with things or an easier time with things, that means that we're condemned or, we're not okay in this or, are under the influence of something. That's not what I'm saying at all. Now, initially, I kind of, was pretty worried myself and thinking, well, maybe that is what this means. Because even though I knew I came here perfect, without blame, without flaw, without any evil, just nothing. I mean, I came here, it was, yeah. I think for some people who get away from God for any period of time, it's natural to wonder, well, even though I'd been saved or baptized as a, child or teenager, if I have done sinful things in my life, am I really okay? And then to especially worry about that when you've been through what I and many other people have been through, you really do worry, especially when you feel that disconnect from God, and it is the most horrible, indescribable, painful feeling I could convey to anyone. I mean, there is just no consolation to you whatsoever. And that's when I really learned firsthand that honestly, we are animated bodies and we can do absolutely nothing by ourselves. We can do nothing without God. And that is a fact that you better believe. Yeah, so going through the spiritual purification process, I really think is what happened to a lot of us. And I know it's really difficult to believe, especially when there's so many other people out there saying different things, especially at this time. really believe that and really have faith in that. But if you just take some time, to do some research and some reading in the scripture, and read some of the, the critiques that some of the scholars put out, and a lot of, the explanations to really get to what different things mean, if you haven't studied the Bible your whole life, like I hadn't, that really will give you so much more insight than, you can imagine, and give you so much more insight than any of these other resources, for these other theories and stories about what this is that's happening. I think that there are other roles in the end days, which we are definitely in, and that the call that many of us are receiving and have been receiving has been to participate in some of these end day things that we're going to be seeing. So don't think that just because somebody else is having an easy time with this and you're having a really difficult time with this, and you feel pretty isolated, pretty disconnected from God. Well, part of the process or part of the thing with the 144,000 and what they're going through, it is going to be pretty difficult, and you are going to feel a lot of persecution from people, a lot of isolation from people, and even from God himself. You are going to be, you've offered to give up some of the graces and consolations that you would have and would be given to you now. But in this agreement that somehow, you've made with him, either, now willingly or before you came here, to go through this and be here at this time, everything, every inconvenience, every what appears to be a curse or, just negative thing you have is actually something that you've given up in order for Christ to be able to reach out to somebody else, or give somebody, some child who they have no food and is eating clay every day, to try to survive, to give them a grace or give them, a hope, or reach out to try to get them to come to Jesus. Every single thing that is being, apparently, ostensibly taken away from you, or that you're not feeling, or that you're being inconvenienced, is being given as a gift to someone else. And you are the kind of person, if you're in this role, that you would have been doing everything, to try to reach out and to try to help people and humanity and those who are hurting anyway. The only difference is that you don't know and don't really have awareness that you are doing this and you are doing good for many people and many souls right now, right at this time. Everything that you're going to feel as an inconvenience and a curse is going to be a blessing that you are actually extending to someone else who's in much greater need. And you're going to have to understand that, because if you are in this position and are going to be going through this, there's going to be a lot you'll need to know so that you'll be able to function and just not have such a difficult time with things, or it will get really unbearably difficult. So, yeah, if that has sunk in and you understood what I said, I'm going to go ahead and tell you now that the sealing of the 144,000 and some of these other things that I've talked about, these aren't things that are to come. This has already happened. And we are already through some of the seals, and the conditions have been met for things to start happening pretty quickly now. You see, the closer you are to the truth, the more difficult things tend to become. what is his name that has the channel? Bonner. Oh gosh, I can't remember his name. You know, and he sees things. A lot of people see the things that just so many people don't and probably won't. You know, I remember for a year, first year, I guess, after I came here, one of the byproducts of being so good when I came is, you know, you really see, after you've been through this process, all the sins you've ever committed. You understand how holy you are, and you understand just, you know, every single sin that you've done in your life. It just stings so bad, and you just feel so bad. And I remember the first year after I came here, you know, before, you know, I'd been going through a lot of problems, you know, marital problems, all kind of different things, and it wouldn't been that big of a deal to go ahead and get divorced and, you know, start my own life, pick up somewhere else. And the double-edged sword to all this was when I came and was so good, and I recognized and saw all the family members and things happening, and I had wanted to fix the marriage and try to save the family at the last point. And, you know, of course, you know, my husband here was not my husband, and there was just no getting through to him whatsoever. It just progressed over time to where it was literally like, you know, Tower of Babel in my household, and I can't get through to anybody. And of course they don't see it, but I remember during that year, you know, all the supernatural things that were happening and attacks, you know, with the cell phone conversations and texts between him and I, and, you know, messages not getting sent or messages being sent that, you know, weren't said, and just things you can't imagine. And after I really realized that last year, just so many thousands and thousands of demons were loosed on the earth, and really knew that they were here and could see them everywhere. And I tell you, the thing that took the cake was a few months ago when I had sent a text to him, and he sent something back that just completely didn't make sense. Like, I don't even know where the conversation came from. And I think these things we're expecting, because we're not really talking anymore, and we're not going to be staying together, that they just assumed, as usual, well, we wouldn't be able to talk about it, and we'd never find out, and, you know, we'd think it's each other and whatever. But he had come, and okay, so anyway, so I ended up talking to him within a couple hours of that text that I got back, and had asked him and showed him my phone, and showed him my phone, he showed me his phone. And he's like, wow, you know, that looks like half of a conversation I sent, you know, a few weeks ago, with half of the response that I tried to send you today. And the funny thing about it was, you know, all these things that I told you I keep seeing about the sky, and, you know, just about what I see and how wrong it looks, and I don't understand why people can't see what I see. Well, I think these things who are trying to create this, you know, illusion of normality up there, I think they can't figure out why I see what I do. And they use that opportunity of the text that he sent back to try to find out. So the text that came back completely out of the blue was like, well, what's wrong? Why does the sky look wrong? What looks wrong to you? He didn't text that to me, but they want to know, you know, why do I see this? You know, what are they doing wrong? What can they fix to, you know, hide themselves better? It's just crazy. You just have no idea what is going on right now. You really need to study the scripture, and you better do a lot of praying. You know, you want to go back and talk about this division again among family members and friends. Well, the Bible is the only theory that actually does have an answer and an account for why that is. And for any of you who live in regions where wheat is grown, you will know when they're talking about the wheat and the tares. During growing season, wheat and tares are identical to one another. There is no way to tell them apart until you get close to the harvest or the reaping season, and the wheat dries out. So in biblical terms, I think a really good possibility for what is happening with all this fractionation of families, loved ones, friends, is that as we get closer to the end times, everybody will be able to tell what everybody is, even if it's not outwardly with eyes. You know as well as I do, your senses are a lot different now, and you can identify good people, bad people, humble people, dishonest people. Can judge the motives of people, in the blink of an eye with no effort at all now. So, unfortunately for the families that this has affected and will continue to affect, as we go through it, I think it is a really good possibility that is actually what we're seeing, is the separation of the wheat and the tares.